I had just gotten back from Poland 3 weeks before my grandmother's 85th birthday. 9 months overseas running logistics for a rotation unit will change your sleep schedule, your patience level, and your tolerance for nonsense. It does not, however, prepare you for being roasted in your own family's backyard. The party was in Northern Virginia. Plastic folding tables, grocery store sheet cake, my cousin arguing with her husband about where to park. Normal family chaos. I flew in from Raleigh that morning, rental cars still smelling like whatever air freshener they think covers up smoke. I brought flowers for Grandma and a card with cash inside because she always slips it back into my purse later and pretends she doesn't know how it got there. I'm Captain Brooke Mercer, 36, Army Logistics, stationed at Fort Liberty. I've done Kuwait and Poland. I don't have kids. I do have a paid-off condo and a retirement account that's doing just fine. In my family, those two facts are apparently connected. By the time I got there, people were already on their second plate of potato salad. I hugged Grandma first. She held my face and told me I looked tired but strong. That's her way of saying I've lost weight again. My sister Danielle was near the drinks table laughing too loud at something on her phone. Her oldest daughter, Kaylee, 17, and permanently online, was bouncing between groups collecting attention like it was currency. I'd been there maybe an hour. Small talk about the Army. A few jokes about how I must get free housing and cheap groceries. I smiled through it. I've learned how to let that stuff roll off. Most people don't understand military pay. They just hear captain and imagine Wall Street. I was sitting near the edge of the long table when it happened. Kaylee had just come back from talking to one of her friends. She was mid-story loud enough that half the yard could hear. She thinks she's special because she's childless and rich. There was a half-second pause. That moment when everyone decides whether to laugh or correct the kid. Danielle laughed, not a polite chuckle, a full head-back laugh. She wiped under her eyes like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all week. My mom joined in. A couple of cousins smirked. No one said, "Hey, that's not cool." I didn't say anything either. I looked at Kaylee. She didn't look nervous. She looked proud of the line. Like she'd finally said what everyone else had been thinking. Childless and rich. It wasn't even the words. It was the delivery. Casual. Dismissive. Like that's the whole summary of who I am. No mention of deployments. No mention of the nights in a tactical operations center trying to fix supply chain issues at 2 a.m. Just childless and rich. Danielle caught my eye while she was still laughing. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't look like she wished she'd stepped in. She looked entertained. That told me more than the joke did. I stood up. Calm. No scene. I walked over to Grandma, leaned down, kissed her cheek, and told her I'd call her later in the week. She squeezed my hand and looked at me like she knew something had shifted. I grabbed my bag, walked past the folding tables, and headed to my rental car. No one followed me. The drive back to my hotel took 20 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. I just replayed the laugh in my head. Not Kaylee's. Danielle's. I've funded 5 college accounts over the last 6 years. 2 for Danielle's girls. 2 for my cousin's kids. 1 for my aunt's grandson after her husband passed. I set them up as 5-2-9 plans. Automatic monthly transfers. Quiet, consistent, boring generosity. About $1,200 a month spread across the accounts. More when I came back from deployments with hazard pay and nothing to spend it on. Over time, it added up to just under $190,000. No one ever asked how much I put in. They just assumed it would be there. That night in the hotel room, I opened my laptop, logged into the 529 portal. All 5 accounts lined up in neat rows with their balances next to them. Kaylee's was just over $40,000. Her sister's close behind. The others a little lower. All on track for 6 figures by the time they graduated. I sat there for a while staring at the screen. I knew exactly how 529 withdrawals worked. If the money isn't used for qualified education expenses, the earnings portion gets taxed and hit with a 10% penalty. I'm not reckless. I understand tax consequences. I've done enough military finance briefings to know how penalties stack up. Pulling the money would cost me. I did the math in my head anyway. Estimated what the penalty would look like. Decided I could live with it. I didn't feel angry. That's the part that surprised me. I felt clear. For years, I'd been the steady one, the reliable one, the one who sends money and never brings it up. When Danielle and her husband had a rough stretch during COVID, I covered 3 months of their mortgage. When Kaylee needed a laptop for school, it showed up 2 days later. No announcement, no lecture. And at a folding table in a backyard, I was reduced to childless and rich. I closed the laptop without touching anything. I didn't trust myself to make a decision at midnight in a Holiday Inn. The next morning, I drove back to Raleigh. 6 hours alone on I-95 gives you time to think. I stopped once for gas and coffee. I didn't call anyone, no dramatic texts, no family group chat message about respect. By the time I crossed into North Carolina, my mind was made up. Monday morning at Fort Liberty started like any other. PT at 0600. Humidity thick enough to chew. I ran with my company focused on cadence and breathing. No one there cared about backyard jokes. They cared about timelines, fuel forecasts, maintenance reports. After PT, I showered, put on my uniform, and headed into the battalion building. I cleared emails, sat through a meeting about upcoming field exercises, signed off on a supply request. At 0937, I logged back into the 529 portal from my office computer. The screen looked the same as it had in the hotel room. 5 accounts, 5 balances, years of automatic discipline. I clicked on the first account, selected the option to liquidate. There's always a confirmation page, a polite warning about tax implications, a reminder that you're about to make a permanent change. I read it carefully. Then I confirmed. One by one, I shut them down. Kaylee's first, then her sister's, then the others. Each time the system processed the request and updated the balance to 0 pending transfer. No speech, no announcement, just numbers changing on a screen. By 10:12 a.m., every college account I funded was empty. I closed the browser and went back to work. My phone started vibrating before lunch. I ignored it the first 3 times. I was in a maintenance sync meeting, and there are only so many ways to discuss vehicle readiness before it all sounds the same. When the screen lit up again, I glanced down at the name, Danielle. I flipped the phone face down and kept listening to my platoon sergeant talk about parts delays. By the time the meeting ended, I had 9 missed calls. 2 from Danielle, 3 from her husband, 4 from my mom. There was also a text from Kaylee that simply said, "What did you do?" I walked back to my office, closed the door, and sat down. My computer screen still showed the spreadsheet I'd been working on. Fuel projections. Numbers that made sense. I picked up the phone and listened to the first voicemail. "Brooke, call me back. Now. The college account is showing 0. There's some kind of mistake. No greeting, no hesitation, just urgency." The second voicemail was more strained. Tuition deposit for Oregon State was due Friday. $750. Kaylee had already committed. Housing forms submitted. Orientation scheduled. The third voicemail wasn't about the deposit. It was about embarrassment. She logged in to show her friend the balance, and it's gone. "Brooke, this makes her look stupid." That part almost made me laugh. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. I didn't feel adrenaline. I didn't feel guilt. I felt steady. Another call came in. This time I answered. Danielle didn't waste time. "Tell me this is a glitch." "It's not." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "Why would you do this to the kids?" "The kids." That word gets used like a shield, like it automatically makes every decision noble. "I didn't do anything to them," I said. "I stopped funding accounts that I was paying for." "You promised." I let that sit for a second. "I never signed a contract." She exhaled hard into the phone. "This is about that stupid joke." I didn't correct her. I didn't explain. I didn't bring up the laugh. "You're overreacting," she said. "Kaylee is 17. Teenagers say dumb things." I thought about that backyard, about how no one stepped in, how the laughter filled the silence where correction should have been. "This isn't about one sentence," I said. "It's about a pattern." "A pattern of what?" "Of being automatic, of being assumed, of being convenient." "I'm not discussing this at work," I told her. "I have a job." "You always hide behind the army," she snapped. That one almost earned a reaction. "I'll talk to you later," I said, and ended the call. Within minutes, my mom called. Her tone was softer. Concern layered over frustration. "Your sister's a mess. Kaylee's crying. You know she's been counting on that money." I swiveled my chair toward the window. Outside, soldiers were walking between buildings, uniforms crisp, lives structured. "I've been counting on respect," I said. "That's dramatic." "No," I replied, "it's accurate." She shifted gears. "You've been stressed since you got back. 9 months overseas is a lot." There it was. Deployment stress. I've heard that phrase used carefully before, usually by people who want to dismiss something without sounding cruel. "I'm fine," I said evenly. "I'm just saying," she continued, "you're not yourself lately." I pictured myself running PT that morning, leading briefings, signing documents worth more than those college accounts combined. "I'm exactly myself," I said. She paused. "So you're really not putting it back?" "No." The line went quiet. Not angry, just calculating. "You're punishing them." "I'm adjusting my boundaries." She sighed, like that was the most exhausting sentence she'd ever heard. After we hung up, I checked my email. There was already a message from Danielle. Subject line: "We need to be adults." The body was longer. Tuition timelines. Budget breakdown. A reminder that she and her husband had always supported my career. A line about how family doesn't keep score. I read it once and archived it. The rest of the day moved normally. I approved supply requests, reviewed an evaluation, answered a call from Brigade about upcoming field exercises. My phone kept lighting up. Cousins now. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in months. One message read, "Are you okay?" That question bothered me more than the anger. It wasn't concern. It was positioning. By the time I drove home that evening, I'd received 2 more voicemails. One from Kaylee crying, saying she didn't mean it like that. One from my brother-in-law suggesting we sit down like adults and fix the misunderstanding. I reheated leftovers, changed into gym clothes, and went for a run around the neighborhood. North Carolina humidity clings to you even after sunset. It forces you to breathe deeper. Halfway through the run, my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. Back at the condo, I showered and sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop. I opened my personal finance tracker. The 529 balances were now fully transferred. The penalty estimate showed up in the summary. A clean number. Manageable. I wasn't reckless. I had savings, investments, a promotion board coming up. My financial future did not depend on being anyone's benefactor. Another text came through, this time from a family friend. "Your mom mentioned you've been having a hard time since deployment. Praying for you." I stared at the screen. That was fast. No one had asked me what happened. They had started explaining me instead. I didn't respond. I took a screenshot and saved it. If they wanted to spin this into instability, I'd keep receipts. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The accounts were gone. The transfers were done. The conversations had started. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting to see what anyone else expected from me. I muted the family group chat before I even got out of bed the next morning. It had exploded overnight. 53 unread messages, screenshots of tuition portals, deadlines circled in red. Someone had pasted a breakdown of freshman housing costs like I worked in the bursar's office. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I made coffee, packed my lunch, and reviewed the training schedule for the week. We had a field exercise coming up, and my platoon leaders needed clarity, not distraction. When you're responsible for moving equipment worth millions of dollars, your brain learns to prioritize quickly. By 8:15 a.m., Danielle was calling again. I answered this time. "Kaylee's orientation deposit is due in 48 hours, she said, skipping hello. "You know that." "I know how deadlines work." She committed to Oregon State because of that account. I leaned against the desk and stared at the wall. She committed to Oregon State because she applied and got accepted. "You're twisting this." "No," I said, "I'm separating facts from assumptions." Her tone sharpened. "You can't just yank almost $40,000 overnight and act like it's nothing." "It's not nothing," I said. "It's mine." There was a pause long enough for both of us to feel it. "You've always said you wanted to help," she said softer now. "I did. And now? Now I don't want to be automatic." She exhaled. "So what, this is some kind of lesson? It's a boundary." She didn't like that word either. After we hung up, I checked the group chat anyway. My cousin Michelle had posted, "Let's all calm down." My aunt had written, "Family comes first." Kaylee had sent a screenshot of her account balance showing 0 followed by 3 crying emojis. I didn't respond. At work, I met with my battalion XO about upcoming supply constraints. He asked if I was good to take on an additional project next quarter. I said yes without hesitation. That's the part no one at home understands. My life doesn't pause because theirs is inconvenient. There are soldiers counting on me to think clearly. Around noon, my mom called again. Your sister says you're being cold. I'm being consistent. She's scrambling Brooke. They didn't budget for this. I opened my calendar and scanned the week. They didn't budget because they didn't think they had to. That's harsh. It's accurate. She tried a different angle. Kaylee feels humiliated. The word hung there. I thought about the backyard, about the laugh, about being summarized into 2 adjectives. I'm familiar with that feeling, I said. There was a quiet shift in her tone. So this is revenge? No, I said. This is math. That line seemed to confuse her. Math. I funded 5 accounts for 6 years. No contract. No obligation. I stopped. She didn't respond right away. Then she said something that caught my attention. People are starting to talk. About what? About how you've changed. Since deployment. There it was again. Deployment. I kept my voice even. I'm not unstable. I didn't say that. You implied it. She sighed. You're reading too much into things. I'd heard that sentence before too. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a minute. This wasn't just about tuition anymore. The narrative was shifting. Not openly, subtly. Enough to plant doubt. That afternoon, during a break between meetings, I walked over to the legal office on post. Not for a formal appointment, just to talk to someone I trusted. Captain Ramirez had been in my officer basic course years ago. Now he worked in JAG. He listened while I summarized the situation. No drama, just facts. Family member made a public comment, I said. I withdrew voluntary college funding. Now there are rumors I'm unstable post-deployment. He leaned back in his chair. Are there any legal threats? No. Any accusations of misconduct? No. Anyone contacting your chain of command? Not that I know of. He nodded. Then this is noise. Ugly noise, but noise. Family disputes aren't security issues unless they involve debt, criminal behavior, or foreign influence. So I don't need to report anything, not unless it escalates. Keep documentation. Don't engage in anything that could be misrepresented. Stay professional. That part I could handle. When I left his office, I felt lighter. Not vindicated. Just clear. Back at my desk, I checked my personal email. Danielle had sent another message. Subject, you're hurting more than just Kaylee. She listed numbers again. Estimated tuition per semester. Housing. Meal plan. She mentioned student loans like they were a tragedy instead of a tool. One sentence stood out. We always thought you were different, but not like this. Different. That word had followed me since high school. Different because I joined the Army. Different because I didn't marry at 25. Different because I didn't measure my life by baby photos. Now different meant inconvenient. I didn't respond. That evening, Kaylee sent me a direct text. I didn't mean it like that. I read it twice. She followed up with, I was just joking. I typed a response, deleted it, typed again. Instead, I wrote jokes usually have a target. She didn't answer. Later that night, I logged into my banking app. The transfers from the 529 accounts had settled. The tax withholding estimate was visible. A clean deduction. The cost of clarity. I updated my financial tracker. Rebalanced a portion into a separate savings bucket. If the money wasn't going toward college accounts anymore, it would go somewhere intentional. Another notification popped up. Venmo. Danielle had sent me $50. Caption for coffee. Sorry about the joke. I stared at it for a long moment. $50. From the same household that had depended on nearly $200,000 over 6 years. I declined the payment. Then I set my phone down and turned it face down on the counter. Outside the neighborhood was quiet. No folding tables, no laughter, no commentary about who I was supposed to be. Just my life. Structured, predictable, mine. And for the first time since that backyard, I felt something solid under my feet that didn't involve anyone else's approval. I saved the screenshot before I let myself react. It was a text from Michelle, my cousin, forwarded from someone else. Your mom said Brooke's been having a hard time since deployment. That's probably why she pulled the money. Probably. I set the phone down and took a slow breath. Rumors in a family are annoying. Rumors connected to your mental stability when you hold a clearance are something else entirely. No one had called my command. No one had filed anything official. But narratives start small. A comment here, a concerned prayer request there. Soon it turns into, she's not herself, and people repeat it enough that it starts sounding true. I wasn't panicking, I was assessing. At work, I ran through a convoy rehearsal brief without missing a beat. My soldiers didn't see any shift. My executive officer didn't pull me aside. There were no whispers in the hallway. Still, that word deployment kept surfacing in my family's explanation for my decision. That evening, I called Danielle again. "I need you to stop telling people I'm unstable," I said. "I never said that. You're implying it. I said you've been stressed. That's normal. Stress and instability aren't the same thing." She hesitated. "You're taking this too personally." "It is personal." There was silence on the line, heavier than before. "You've changed," she said. "I stopped being convenient." "That's not fair." "No," I said evenly, "it's new." She shifted to defense. "You're making us look irresponsible." "You are responsible." "For what?" "For your own bills." That landed harder than I expected. "You act like we're freeloaders." I acted like I was generous. "And now I'm selective." She didn't like that word either. After we hung up, I sent a short email to Captain Ramirez. Not dramatic. Just documenting that family members were circulating comments about post-deployment stress tied to a financial dispute. His reply came back within an hour. "Not reportable at this time. Continue documenting. Avoid written exchanges that could be mischaracterized." That was all I needed. I wasn't afraid of losing my clearance. I was careful about protecting it. The next day, my mom left a voicemail that shifted the tone again. I talked to Kaylee. She's embarrassed. She didn't think it would turn into this, as if the problem was the reaction, not the comment. "She's worried you hate her." I didn't hate her. I hated that no one corrected her. That afternoon, Kaylee sent another text. "Dad says we can figure out loans. I just wish you'd talk to me first." Loans. There it was. The reality they'd avoided. College has always involved loans for most families. Somehow in ours, it had involved me. I typed back, "You're going to be fine." She responded, "It just feels like you don't care." I stared at that sentence for a long time. For 6 years, I'd cared quietly. Covered deposits, increased contributions after promotions, added extra after deployments when I had hazard pay and no time to spend it. Caring had been automatic. Now that it wasn't, it looked like indifference. "I care," I wrote. "I'm not obligated." She didn't respond. That evening, I went to the gym on post. Deadlifts have a way of clearing your head. Numbers don't argue. Plates don't spin narratives. While I was resting between sets, my phone buzzed again. A LinkedIn notification. Danielle had viewed my profile. I almost laughed. I hadn't posted anything about the situation. No passive-aggressive quotes. No vague references to betrayal. Just the usual professional updates. Logistics conference. Training certification. Army birthday post. If she was looking for public justification, she wasn't going to find it. Later that week, during a field exercise, I was out at a staging area checking load plans when my phone vibrated in my cargo pocket. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened that night, it was my aunt. "We're all worried about you," she said. "Your mom says you've been distant since coming back." Distant. I replayed the voicemail once more. The tone wasn't accusing. It was almost sympathetic, like I was a case study. I drove home from the training site under a humid Carolina sky headlights, cutting through thick air. I wasn't distant. I was measured. Back at my condo, I opened my laptop again. Not to look at the 529 accounts. Those were done. I pulled up my overall financial plan instead. Without the monthly transfers, I had more flexibility. I could increase contributions to my TSP, accelerate a renovation I'd been putting off, or direct the money somewhere that aligned with who I actually am. I clicked over to the Fisher House Foundation website. I'd volunteered with them once during a stateside assignment. They support military families when a service member is hospitalized. Real need. No entitlement. I didn't donate yet. I just read. My phone buzzed again. "Danielle," I answered. "Kaylee got her financial aid package," she said. "It's not terrible." "That's good. We're working it out." "I figured you would." She sounded tired. Less angry, more practical. "She keeps asking if you're coming to her graduation party next month." That surprised me. "I haven't decided. She misses you." I didn't know what to do with that. "I didn't pull the accounts to hurt her," I said. "Then why?" "Because I don't want to be the reason anyone feels entitled to my life." She didn't argue this time. "I didn't realize you felt that way," she said quietly. "I didn't realize you didn't." We let that sit between us. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen, hands on the counter, looking at nothing in particular. The money was gone. The rumors were contained. The panic was shifting into logistics. And somewhere between the accusations and the awkward silence, something fundamental in our dynamic had moved out of place. I pulled up my old bank statements that Saturday morning and scrolled back 6 years. Not because I needed proof for anyone else, because I wanted to see it in one place. Automatic transfers. $1,200 a month split across 5,529 plans. Extra deposits after Kuwait. Larger lump sums after Poland when hazard pay hit, and I didn't have time to spend it. A $3,000 bump the year Kaylee started looking at colleges. It was steady, predictable, quiet. I remembered the first time I set the accounts up. Danielle had been overwhelmed. 2 kids, 1 income that fluctuated, and a lot of anxiety about falling behind. I had just made captain. My pay had stabilized. I was maxing out my TSP and still had room. I can help with college, I told her back then. She cried, hugged me, said I was saving her from years of stress. I never asked for recognition. I didn't need it. I just didn't expect to become invisible. There was the mortgage stretch during COVID. 3 months of payments wired directly so they wouldn't dip into retirement savings. Danielle had thanked me privately. Publicly, she'd told people they'd worked it out. There was the time Kaylee needed a new laptop for school. I ordered it online and had it shipped to their house. Danielle posted on Facebook about how proud she was that we were able to get Kaylee exactly what she wanted. I hadn't corrected her. There was the roof repair for my mom's house. Insurance didn't cover all of it. I transferred the difference without blinking. At Thanksgiving that year, my mom told everyone the insurance company had come through. I hadn't corrected her either. It wasn't about credit. It was about erasure. I'd become the quiet safety net, useful when needed, omitted when not. Looking at the numbers laid out in neat columns, I could see the pattern clearly. Every time their stress rose, my money filled the gap. Every time stability returned, the narrative adjusted so that I faded out of it. No one was malicious. That's what makes entitlement so slippery. It doesn't look like greed. It looks like comfort. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Michelle this time. I just want to understand, she said. Is this really about that comment? It's about the laugh, I replied. She was quiet for a second. Danielle says you've always been sensitive about the whole no kids thing. I let out a slow breath. I'm not sensitive about not having kids, I said. I'm sensitive about being reduced to it. That's fair, she admitted. You know what's interesting? I continued. No one's ever introduced me as the one who funded 5 college accounts. That's not really something you lead with. Exactly. She didn't argue that. I think people just assumed it would always be there, she said carefully. That's the problem. Assumption is comfortable. It removes urgency. It removes gratitude. Later that evening, I went over my promotion packet again. Officer evaluation reports, deployment citations, fitness scores, everything that actually defined my career. There was something grounding about it. The Army doesn't assume your rank will always be there. You earn it. You compete for it. You're evaluated. Family had never evaluated my contribution. They'd absorbed it. Sunday afternoon, I drove out to the commissary on post. Normal errands, laundry detergent, coffee, chicken breasts for the week. In the checkout line, I saw a young specialist juggling a baby carrier and groceries. She looked exhausted. A man in line behind her quietly paid the difference when her card declined. She thanked him 3 times. Embarrassed, grateful. That's what real need looks like, I thought. Not entitlement, not assumption. Gratitude. Back home, I opened my laptop again. This time I didn't look at old transfers. I opened the Fisher House donation page. Then another tab for a scholarship program that supports first-generation college students from military families. I read through the mission statements carefully. Transparent budgets, clear impact reports, no emotional manipulation. I still didn't click donate. Instead, I opened a blank document and typed out my monthly budget. With the 529 transfers gone, I had flexibility. Roughly $1,200 a month freed up. I could invest it, save it, or redirect it. Danielle texted around dinner time. Kaylee got a small merit scholarship. That's great. She's looking at part-time campus jobs too. I smiled at that. She'll learn a lot from that. She shouldn't have to. Most people do. She didn't respond immediately. A few minutes later, another message came through. I didn't realize how much you were putting in every month. I stared at the screen. You never asked, I wrote back. That wasn't accusatory. It was factual. She replied, I guess I didn't want to know. There it was. Honesty slipping through the cracks. Why, I asked. Because if I knew, it would have felt like I owed you. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. That sentence explained more than the backyard joke ever could. Owing creates discomfort. Discomfort creates resentment. Resentment finds outlets. Sometimes it looks like laughter at a folding table. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kaylee. Dad says I can take out a federal loan. It's not as bad as I thought. You'll be fine, I typed. Are you still coming to graduation? I paused before answering. Yes. Her response was quick. Okay. Short, neutral, not warm, not hostile. I closed my laptop and looked around my condo. Clean lines. Organized shelves. No chaos. No folding tables. I hadn't pulled the accounts because I wanted them to struggle. I pulled them because I wanted to stop disappearing inside my own generosity. For years, I'd believed that helping quietly was enough. That maturity meant absorbing small insults and keeping things moving. Now I was seeing the cost of that approach in hard numbers and uncomfortable conversations. And the more I looked at the past 6 years laid out in bank statements and half-acknowledged favors, the clearer it became that what felt sudden to them had been building quietly for a long time. I clicked donate before I could overthink it. Not the entire amount. Not in one dramatic transfer. That would have been emotional. I don't make financial decisions emotionally. I started with $20,000 to Fisher House. Enough to matter. Enough to feel deliberate. The confirmation email hit my inbox within seconds. Clean. Professional. No guilt. No commentary about what kind of person I was supposed to be. I sat back in my chair and let the quiet settle. The next transfer went to a scholarship fund that supports first-generation college students from military families. Kids whose parents rotate every few years. Kids who don't have a backyard full of relatives assuming someone else will cover the bill. This time I didn't hesitate. The money wasn't disappearing. It was redirecting. Later that afternoon, I drafted a short LinkedIn post. Nothing dramatic, nothing pointed. Proud to support military family and first-generation college scholarships this year. Education changes trajectories. Grateful to be in a position to contribute. I read it twice. Removed one sentence that sounded slightly preachy. Hit post. I closed the app and went back to work. Within an hour, the likes started rolling in. Colleagues. A former battalion commander. A logistics captain I'd mentored 2 years ago. Comments about leadership. About service beyond the uniform. No one asked why. That evening, Danielle texted. I saw your post. I imagined her scrolling LinkedIn trying to piece it together. Okay, I replied. So that's where it went. Some of it. She didn't respond right away. A few minutes later, you didn't have to make it public. I leaned against the kitchen counter and reread that message. It's not about you, I typed back. It feels like it. I didn't correct her again. Because it wasn't about making her feel small. It was about making myself feel aligned. She sent one more message. Mom thinks you're trying to embarrass us. I stared at that one for a while. If I wanted to embarrass you, I replied, I would have said something at the party. That ended the exchange. The next day at work, my battalion commander pulled me aside after a meeting. Good post, he said. We need more officers who invest back into the community. I nodded. Appreciate it, sir. He didn't know the backstory. He didn't need to. Later that week, I increased my automatic contribution to the scholarship fund. Not to prove a point, just because the math made sense. If I'd been comfortable sending $1,200 a month into accounts that generated awkwardness, I could send it somewhere that generated impact. Meanwhile, the group chat had gone quiet. No more screenshots. No more tuition breakdowns. Just occasional neutral messages about grandma's doctor appointment or a cousin's new job. Danielle called that Saturday. Kaylee picked up extra shifts at the bookstore near campus, she said. That's good experience. She's tired. So was I when I worked during school. She's not you. I know. That wasn't an insult. It was reality. She asked why you didn't just talk to her first. Danielle continued. I tried talking for years, I said. This is the first time I changed behavior. There was a long pause. You really don't see this as revenge. No. She let out a breath that sounded less defensive than usual. It feels like punishment. It's reallocation. She actually laughed at that. You always talk like a logistics officer. It's accurate. She grew quiet again. I didn't realize how much I'd gotten used to it, she admitted. To what? To you being the safety net. I didn't respond immediately. That's not a role, I said finally. That's a dependency. She didn't argue. Later that afternoon, I checked the scholarship fund dashboard. They'd already sent a thank you email detailing how the funds would be distributed. Clear metrics. Transparent process. No emotional manipulation. I forwarded the email to myself and saved it in a folder labeled intentional. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kaylee. I saw your post too. I waited. It's cool, I guess. I smiled slightly at the phrasing. You're going to meet a lot of people who fund scholarships, I typed. Most of them don't know the students personally. Are you saying you don't know me? I'm saying I know you'll figure it out. She didn't reply right away. A few minutes later, I didn't mean that joke like everyone keeps saying I did. I know. That wasn't entirely true. But it wasn't a lie either. Intent and impact aren't always aligned. I was trying to be funny, she wrote. Sometimes funny costs something. She didn't respond. That night I reviewed my monthly budget again. With the scholarship contributions set, I still had breathing room. I moved a portion into a separate investment account. Long-term growth. No audience. The shift in my family was subtle but noticeable. No one asked me to restore the accounts anymore. No one sent Venmo transfers. No more passive comments about deployment stress. Instead, there was space. Awkward space. Quieter space. For years, my presence had been tied to my funding. Now those two things were separated. The following week, I got an invitation in the mail. Handwritten address. Thick envelope. From my grandmother. Inside was a simple card. Dinner. Just family. No noise. No details. No agenda. I set the card on this kitchen counter and looked at it for a long moment. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. I left the invitation on the counter for 3 days before I texted Danielle. I'll be there Sunday. She replied almost immediately. Thank you. No extra words, no emojis, no pressure. In the weeks leading up to that dinner, something shifted in the background. Not dramatically, just practically. Kaylee finalized her federal loan package. Danielle told me they worked out a payment plan for the remaining tuition balance. Her husband picked up additional sales travel. Michelle mentioned she was helping her son apply for smaller local scholarships instead of assuming anything would be covered. No one collapsed. No one lost their house. No one ended up on the street. They adjusted. That's what struck me most. The money hadn't been survival. It had been comfort. Danielle called one evening while I was reviewing training slides. Kaylee got a campus job, she said. 10 hours a week at the bookstore. That's solid. She's complaining. She'll stop once she sees the paycheck. Danielle laughed softly. Not the backyard laugh. A different one. She said she didn't realize how much things cost. Most people don't, I said. Until they do. There was a pause. You know, she added, we probably should have had her working part-time sooner. I didn't say I'd been thinking that for years. Instead, I said, it's good experience. The tone of our conversations had changed. Less accusation. More logistics. At work, I was in the middle of planning a large equipment movement exercise. We were coordinating transport schedules, fuel estimates, maintenance windows. Every detail mattered. It felt strangely grounding. The Army doesn't care about family drama. It cares about execution. Clear plans. Accountability. You don't assume someone else will handle your load plan. You check it yourself. I found myself applying that same mindset to everything else. One afternoon, Michelle called. I just wanted to say, she began. We figured out tuition for next semester. That's good. It's tight, but it's handled. I could hear the difference in her voice. Not resentment. Not panic. Focus. Did you apply for the state grant? I asked. Yeah, I should have done that earlier. She hesitated before continuing. I think we all got used to you being there. It made us lazy. That word hung in the air. Lazy, I repeated. Financially, she clarified. Not in life. Just, we didn't have to think as hard. I appreciated the honesty. Thinking hard is good, I said. She laughed. You always talk like you're giving a briefing. Occupational hazard. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair and looked around my condo. Nothing had changed in my physical space. Same couch. Same framed deployment photo on the wall. Same neat kitchen. But the dynamic outside of it had shifted. For the first time, my financial choices weren't being absorbed as background noise. They were being felt. A week before the dinner, Kaylee called, not a text. An actual call. I answered. Hey. Hey. Her voice sounded less defensive than before. I got my work schedule, she said. It's not terrible. That's good. I'm learning how to balance classes and shifts. You will. She paused. I didn't realize you were putting that much into the account. You didn't ask. I know. Another pause. I guess I thought that's just what you did. What did you think I did? Fund stuff? I let out a small breath. I also deploy, and manage people, and file taxes, and get tired. She was quiet. I didn't mean you don't do other things, she said quickly. I know. The conversation didn't turn into a heart-to-heart. It stayed practical. I'm going to try to apply for more scholarships, she said. That's smart. Do you think I'll be okay? Yes, I meant that. When I hung up, I realized something simple. She sounded less entitled and more uncertain. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's real. It forces growth. Saturday morning before the dinner, I went for a long run. North Carolina humidity again, thick and steady. My mind felt clear. I thought about the last few months. The panic calls, the accusations, the rumors about deployment stress, the LinkedIn post, the awkward silence that followed. No one had asked me to restore the accounts lately. Not directly, not indirectly. Instead, they'd adapted. That didn't erase the backyard. It didn't undo the laugh. But it reframed the impact. The money had been a cushion. Removing it exposed what was underneath. Budget gaps, assumptions, resentment, insecurity. It also exposed capability. Danielle and her husband were handling their bills. Kaylee was working. Michelle was applying for grants. The world hadn't ended. That evening, I laid out a simple black dress on my bed. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just appropriate. I checked the address on the invitation again, even though I knew it by heart. Grandma's house. Same one with the folding tables in the backyard. This time it wouldn't be crowded. No Bluetooth speaker, no sheet cake. Just family. I grabbed my keys and set them on the counter next to the invitation. I parked 2 houses down from Grandma's place and sat in the car for a minute before getting out. Not because I was nervous, just because I wanted to walk in steady. The house looked the same. White siding, flower pots near the porch. No folding tables this time. No noise spilling into the yard. When I stepped inside, it was quiet. Too quiet for our family. Grandma was already at the dining table. Danielle sat across from her. My mom was at the far end. No kids, no spouses, just the 4 of us. Hi, honey, Grandma said, reaching for my hand. I leaned down and kissed her cheek. Danielle looked different without the chaos around her. Less performative. More tired. Thanks for coming, she said. I took the empty chair and folded my hands on the table. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, green beans, water in plain glasses, no wine. No one rushed to fill the silence. Danielle finally spoke. I've been replaying that day, she said. Over and over. I didn't interrupt. When Kaylee made that comment, I laughed because it felt easier than correcting her. Easier than what I asked. Easier than admitting she was repeating something I've probably said before. That landed quietly. You've called me childless and rich before I asked. Not like that, she said quickly. But I've made jokes. About how you don't have the same responsibilities. About how you must have it easy. Do you think I have it easy? She hesitated. I think you're disciplined, she said carefully. And that makes the rest of us feel exposed. I let that sit. It wasn't funny, she continued. But it felt safe to laugh. Like we were all in on the same joke. At my expense. Yes, Mom shifted in her chair. I shouldn't have laughed either, she said. I just didn't want to create tension at your grandmother's party. You created something else instead, I said. She nodded slowly. I didn't realize how much we leaned on you, Danielle said. Not just financially, emotionally. You were the stable one. The one who didn't need anything. That's not true, I said. You never asked for anything. That's different. Grandma cleared her throat softly. People get comfortable, she said. Comfort makes them careless. Danielle looked at me again. When the accounts went to 0, it scared me, she admitted. Not just because of tuition. Because I realized how much I'd assumed. Assumed what? That you'd always step in. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. That assumption wasn't healthy, I said. I know that now. Mom leaned forward slightly. I've been thinking about the deployment comments, she said. I shouldn't have framed it like that. It sounded like you were explaining me away, I said. I was, she admitted. It was easier than admitting we hurt you. There it was. Hurt. I hadn't used that word. Danielle took a breath. I didn't ask you to turn the accounts back on, she said. And I'm not going to. I met her eyes. I'm not turning them back on. I know. The air in the room felt different. Not lighter. Just honest. Kaylee is figuring out her budget, Danielle continued. She's working. She's learning. She'll be fine, I said. I think so too. There was a pause. I was jealous, Danielle said suddenly. Of all the things she could have said, that wasn't what I expected. Of what? Your freedom, she said. Your rank. Your stability. You leave for 9 months, come back, and you're promoted. You invest money. You have structure. That structure comes with trade-offs. I know, she said. But from the outside, it looks controlled. Predictable. And yours doesn't? She gave a small laugh. Have you met my life? We all smiled slightly at that. I didn't realize how much that insecurity leaked out in small ways, she said. Jokes, comments, laughing when I should have shut it down. I would have preferred a correction, I said. I know. Mom reached for her water glass. I also didn't like feeling like we owed you, she said. It made me uncomfortable. You didn't owe me, I said. It felt like we did. And instead of saying thank you, you minimized it. She nodded. That's fair. No one cried. No one raised their voice. Grandma watched quietly, her hands folded in her lap. You all love each other, she said finally. You just forgot how to show it without money in the middle. That was probably the most accurate sentence of the night. I didn't pull the accounts because I hate you, I said. I pulled them because I don't want to be the family wallet. Danielle gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. You were more than that. Not that day. She didn't argue. Mom leaned back in her chair. I don't expect you to go back to how it was, she said. I just don't want to lose you over pride. You're not losing me, I said. You're losing the automatic version of me. Danielle looked at that word. Automatic, she repeated. Yes. The conversation drifted after that. Smaller topics. Grandma's garden. Kaylee's campus housing. My upcoming field exercise. No one mentioned money again. When dinner ended, I helped clear the plates. Normal motions. No dramatic hugs. No declarations of fresh starts. At the door, Danielle hesitated. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. Even when I don't say it right. I nodded. Say it right next time. She almost smiled. I stepped out into the cool Virginia night and walked back toward my car. The house behind me was quiet again, but not tense. Just quiet. I was standing in the battalion conference room when the promotion list hit my inbox. No drum roll. No dramatic announcement. Just a subject line from HRC and a PDF attachment. I opened it on my government laptop, scanned past the header, and ran my finger down the column of names. Mercer Brook A. Selected. I didn't react right away. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't filling in what I wanted to see. Then I closed the document and leaned back in my chair. Major. 8 years ago, that rank felt far away. Something for officers who had mastered both patience and politics. Now it was a line on a list. I texted Danielle before I called anyone else. Promotion list came out. I made major. Her response came back in less than a minute. Oh my God. Brooke, that's huge. No commentary about money. No sideways remarks about how the Army must be easy. Just that. Mom called next. I'm so proud of you, she said, voice steady. You earned that. I believed her this time. The promotion ceremony was scheduled for late spring. Small formation. On post. Nothing flashy. When I sent the invitation, I didn't know who would show up. I expected Grandma. Maybe Mom. The morning of the ceremony, the humidity had already settled in by 800. Soldiers lined up in formation uniforms pressed. My battalion commander stood near the podium flipping through note cards. I spotted Danielle before she saw me. She was standing next to Mom, wearing a navy dress, hair pulled back neatly. Kaylee was beside her, looking slightly uncomfortable in heels. That surprised me. Danielle caught my eye and gave a small wave. Not exaggerated, just present. The ceremony moved quickly. National anthem. Brief remarks about leadership and responsibility. My commander spoke about deployment supply chain management under pressure mentoring junior officers. He didn't mention family. He didn't mention college funds. He talked about performance. When it was time to pin on the new rank, I had asked Danielle to do one side and Mom to do the other. It felt intentional. Danielle's hands were steady as she clipped the oak leaf onto my shoulder. She looked at the insignia for a second before stepping back. You earned this, she said quietly. Not we're proud, not look at you, just that. After the ceremony, people mingled near the company area. My soldiers came up first. Handshakes. A few jokes about how I'd better not forget them now. Kaylee approached last. Major Mercer, she said, a half-smile tugging at her mouth. That's going to take some getting used to, I replied. You look official. I always did. She rolled her eyes slightly. Danielle stood nearby, listening. A few of my colleagues stopped to introduce themselves to my family. One mentioned the scholarship post from a few months ago and how it had inspired him to look into donating as well. Danielle heard that. She didn't look uncomfortable. She looked thoughtful. Later, as we stood off to the side near the parking lot, Danielle said something I didn't expect. I used to think you had it easy because you didn't have kids, she said. But watching this, it's not easy. It's structured. It's earned, I said. She nodded. I think I confused freedom with simplicity. That's common, Kaylee chimed in. My campus bookstore manager said something like that, she said. He said people who look stable usually worked for it. I looked at her. He's right. Mom stepped closer. I've been volunteering at the women's shelter twice a week, she said. It made me realize how many people don't have anyone stepping in for them. That's good, I said. I think I needed to feel useful without relying on you. That sentence stuck. Not defensive, not apologetic, just honest. We walked back toward the cars together. The sun was high heat bouncing off the pavement. Danielle slowed her pace slightly. I'm not gonna lie, she said. The last few months were rough. I know. But we figured it out. I know. She glanced at me. You didn't come back the same after that party. No. You're colder. Clearer, I corrected. She considered that. Fair. Kaylee adjusted the strap on her purse. I'm taking a budgeting class next semester, she said. They make freshmen do it. That's smart. She looked at me directly. I didn't realize you were paying $1,200 a month. I never advertised it. Yeah. There wasn't an apology in that exchange, not a formal one. But there was acknowledgement. At my car, Danielle paused. I don't expect you to restart anything, she said. I just wanted you to know. I see you differently now. Different how? As someone we relied on, not someone who owed us. That was closer. Mom hugged me before getting into her car. You're not just childless and rich, she said with a small smile. You're disciplined and stubborn. I'll take that. As they drove off post, I stood there for a moment looking at the oak leaf on my shoulder. Promotion doesn't erase family dynamics. It doesn't rewrite history, but it does clarify something. My rank wasn't tied to how much I gave away. My worth wasn't measured by tuition deposits. For the first time in a long time, my success and my boundaries existed in the same space without competing with each other. I logged into my bank account that night and looked at the line where the 529 transfers used to sit. $1,200, automatic, predictable, unquestioned. The line was still gone. I didn't feel tempted to bring it back. Promotion to major didn't suddenly make me generous again. It didn't soften the boundary. If anything, it reinforced it. I had more responsibility now. More soldiers. More decisions. More visibility. Clarity mattered even more. The week after the ceremony, Danielle called while I was reviewing training schedules. Kaylee got her fall tuition covered, she said. Between the loan, the scholarship, and her job. That's good. She's already talking about applying for more grants next year. She'll get better at it. Danielle paused. I don't want you to feel like we only show up when we need something. You haven't lately. That's intentional. I believed her. There were no more Venmo transfers with awkward captions. No more breakdowns of tuition bills. No more comments about how the Army must be paying me too much. Instead, there were normal conversations. About Grandma's doctor appointment. About Kaylee's roommate situation. About my upcoming field problem. It felt balanced. A few days later, Kaylee texted me a photo of her bookstore name tag. First official shift, she wrote. I responded with a thumbs up and don't give away the inventory. She sent back, you sound like my manager. That's because I am one, I replied. She didn't argue. That Saturday, I drove up to Virginia again for Kaylee's graduation party. Backyard. Folding tables. Same house. This time, when someone joked about me being the rich aunt, Danielle cut it off. She worked for everything she has, she said casually without looking at me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a speech. It was correction. I noticed. Kaylee introduced me to a few of her friends. This is my Aunt Brooke, she said. She's in the Army. She just made major. No mention of money. No summary in 2 adjectives. Just rank. At one point, Mom pulled me aside near the kitchen. "I know you're not putting the accounts back," she said. "I'm not. I respect that." That was new. "I also don't want you to feel like you can't give if you want to," she added. "I can," I said. "I just choose when." She nodded. "That's fair." Later, Danielle joined us. "I was thinking," she said, "instead of automatic college accounts, maybe you could just show up when you want to. Birthdays, milestones, no expectations." "That's the idea." She smiled slightly. "We're learning. So am I." That was the part I hadn't said out loud before. Pulling the accounts hadn't just forced them to adjust. It had forced me to adjust too. I'd been hiding behind generosity. It was easier to send money than to confront patterns. Money smooths tension. Boundaries expose it. A month later, I received another email from the scholarship fund. They'd awarded grants to 3 students from military families. One of them had written a short thank you note. "I never thought someone I didn't know would invest in my future," it read. I read that sentence twice. There was no awkwardness in it, no entitlement, just gratitude. That same week, Danielle texted. "Kaylee's first paycheck came in. She's weirdly proud of it. She should be. She asked me if you worked during school. I did. What did you do?" "Stocked shelves, tutored, whatever paid." Danielle laughed softly. "I think she's starting to see you differently. I hope she sees herself differently too." There were still moments of friction. A stray comment here, a slight edge there. We're family. We're not a corporate board. But the baseline had changed. No one assumed my money would appear. No one framed my decisions as instability. No one treated my deployment as an excuse for boundaries. I never reopened the 529 accounts, not out of spite, not out of punishment. Because the dynamic that required them no longer existed. When Kaylee started her first semester, she sent me a photo of her campus bookstore schedule taped to her dorm wall. "Trying this adult thing," she wrote. "Good," I replied. "It's a long-term contract." She sent back, "Do I get hazard pay?" "Only if you join the Army." She didn't respond to that. One evening, months later, I was sitting on my balcony in Raleigh, reviewing next quarter's budget projections. The air was cooler. The chaos from that backyard felt distant. I thought about the version of me who would have laughed it off. Who would have kept the transfers going to avoid tension? Who would have accepted being summarized because it was easier than correcting it? That version of me was efficient, generous, invisible. This version was still generous, just visible. I didn't shut down every account because I was angry. I shut them down because I wanted to exist in my family without a price tag attached. And now when they look at me, they don't see a walking tuition plan. They see Major Brooke Mercer. That's enough. If there's one thing this family drama taught me, it's that generosity without boundaries turns into expectation. And expectation left unchecked turns into resentment. I didn't shut down those accounts to win. I did it to reset. Family revenge stories don't always end with someone losing everything. Sometimes they end with everyone adjusting. My sister still has her kids. My niece still has her education. And I still have my career, my rank, and my peace. The difference now is simple. I give because I choose to not, because it's assumed. If this story resonated with you, especially if you've ever felt like the quiet provider in your own family drama, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We share real, grounded revenge stories and family revenge stories that focus on strength, boundaries, and growth. If you believe success and self-respect can exist at the same time, you're in the right place.